And so welcome, Bob, and welcome everybody else. I'm absolutely delighted to have you. And hi, Sean. I think Sean is driving, as he told me he was going to be. So my name is Tina Greenbaum, and I am the founder and creator of a program called Mastery Under Pressure. And I chose to do this program. This is our second inaugural program because, as I was telling everybody a little bit before, right before the pandemic, I was at a networking event, and a woman who was the CEO of her company asked me what I did, and I told her what I did, and she said, it's really interesting, it's important, but it's not particularly urgent. And so any of you that know that Eisenhower thing on time management, this fit into the important but not urgent. And so here comes the pandemic, and all of a sudden, mental health and really what's going on in the back end of people's lives is coming to be public. And so that's my reason for being here, to bring these stories. Bob has some great stories, I know, and to really acknowledge that everybody has a backstory. I don't care who they are, what they are, nobody escapes life. So with that, Bob, I'm going to start with a question or two, and then we're going to take it wherever it goes. So number one, again, another one of my premises is, and I think you can probably all relate to this, that what happens, the patterns that are created in childhood do impact us as grown-ups. As many people like to think maybe it doesn't, but it does. So with that, Bob, tell us a little bit about your background and your family of origin, if you would.
Sure, Tina. And honestly, I am just so humbled and honored to have some of my dear friends here, and those who I'm just meeting today. So, yeah, so I'm a Long Island boy, born and bred in South Shore in Nassau County. I am one of 5 kids. I have an older sister with 3 younger brothers, so I'm the oldest boy. Grew up in a household of very, very, modest means, and as functional as a family can be, and as dysfunctional as a family can be. But I think, as I grew up, and so many things to reflect on, candidly, many, many years later, and many gyrations in my life, did I understand my role, if you will, as the oldest male, sort of behind my sister, sort of the level of responsibility that I was given, earned, or took, but also the independence that I had gotten, at a very young age of 7, with 3 younger brothers, who, candidly had some challenges in their lives. I was walking to school at 7 years old by myself. So off you go. I was making my Eggos. We didn't have any syrup, so I'd make my own syrup, through sugar and maple, concentrate and whatever. I learned to be really, really independent, and those things played so much of part of my life that they've been invaluable. Throughout the years, I could have been that prodigal, that good boy child. I was an Eagle Scout. I played sports, all the things that you can imagine, sort of just, kids will do. I had a sister who very, very smart, always the one to look up to, always, a bit intellectual, and, my mother's daughter. And then, like I said, 3 younger brothers who, provided a lot of challenges. But I think as life went on, I had 2 parents who got a bit tired of children. Everybody sort of, the younger one certainly got away with a lot. I used to talk about how my youngest brother used to get in trouble. It seemed like he always got in trouble. And it just turned out his odds were much higher because he just did so many bad things. And but I was always the responsible one. But very candidly, it put a lot of responsibility on me in the fact of sort of becoming, if you will, the successful one in the family. I went to college. I finished college, came out of school, and I've had a blessed fortunate, career here at Deloitte and previous to Deloitte, and some of you who know me, I am, a lot of hard work has gone into it, and a lot of that responsibility and independence and drive has paid off spades. But I will say it also hasn't come with some baggage, some baggage around having to worry about and care for people, my younger siblings to be specific, but those things have come into my life in general. In work, I used to get feedback from some of my leadership that said Bob couldn't give a bad message. Bob didn't know how to give the hard message because it was hard for me to sort of make some of those hard decisions or be the tough guy. So, those types of things sort of bled into my life.
So let me ask you a question, Bob, if I could.
Yeah.
Could you just kind of go into that a little bit? Because that's kind of an important thing, that you couldn't give a bad message, that empathy was the good news and also sometimes not the so good news. So how did that play out for you?
Well, I think that, like I said, it was hard for me to be the disciplinarian. It's hard for me to actually, there's a simpler way to think about it. I hate confrontation. Hate it. Hate it, hate it, hate it.
There you go.
Right? So to a degree, those are some of the things about being empathetic. I don't want to hurt people's feelings. I don't want to, sort of be the disciplinarian in situations or the tough guy or this or that. And obviously in my career, that has both eaten at me and forced me into so many uncomfortable situations. But I will tell you that it is a skill learned for me. It's not inherent to me. And I do it because I have to in many cases. I've become so much more comfortable over the years in doing it. But it was always hard for me. And to a degree, there's another dimension of it, Tina, that has come out in that this very high standard I've set for myself in a lot of dimensions about performance or always trying to do the right thing, has come back at times for me to be forthcoming with information that's not necessarily positive, whether it's about myself or about a situation. So, it is back to, operating outside of my comfort zone, pushing me into areas that I know need to be sort of taken care of or done, but are not natural to me at all. And, I'll come back to, two really good, loving parents, a bit of data points there, a very, very strong mother, and a very kind, generous dad. But my dad could never live up to my mom's expectations. My dad was always sort of fighting for, looking for that attention. And, my mother was just tough. She was a tough woman. And, back to off you go, walk to school at 7 years old. That independence played well in my life, but it didn't always give me the satisfaction or the, nurturing that maybe, I've looked for over the years. So, a lot of these things have bubbled up in my life as I've done a lot of reflection, a lot of work with Tina over the years. Tina, for those who are new to this call, has been my life coach, who has taught me and shown me, sort of put that mirror up to me many, many times about, Bob's behavior or Bob's, view on things, and shed a lot of light to new perspectives. And I think all of these things, I will tell you, in the last 15, 20 years of my career, have come out to make me the leader I am today. To be able to make hard decisions, the ability to take a position, the ability to truly demonstrate leadership, but in my style, not in somebody else's style. And I
So
think that
so
is
I want to go back, kind of broaden this out a little bit, Bob, because I
sure.
do know you well, and kind of followed with you as you were growing in your leadership role. And one of the things that I do remember is you were really looking for that leadership responsibility because
Yeah.
that is your nature, right? And so, can you share with us a little bit of some of the issues that would come up when you would kind of want to go in one direction and maybe, your superiors or your team had other ideas for you?
Yeah, Tina, that's a great reminder of some of the challenges I've had. I always thought that some of these leadership positions within my firm were a matter of, somebody sitting in a certain seat responsible for something. And there was a time where, I had one of these leadership positions and I was, that switched out from under me. There have been times where I've been passed up for different roles. And candidly, very, very hurt, very, if you will, both emotional, but I needed to mourn them. And I think, Tina, you gave me a perspective once, which I thought was fantastic. When I was in my, 40s and 50s, I played soccer and, I'd play every weekend. And you use this analogy that, Bob, you can try out for the team and you're a fullback, but if they're looking for a forward, there's not much more you can do about that. And it was really hard for me, or it was great perspective that all I need to do was the best athlete I could be. But if I did not fit the bill for all the, coach's requirements, then, I might be passed over. I will tell you that half of those decisions, 21 years later, some of them have actually been blessings. Getting passed up for certain roles at that point in time was like, oh my God, I'm devastated. Where I can reflect on them today and say, it gave me X, Y, and Z opportunities. Oh my God, what that job came with baggage and problems and, unproductive, work, and not letting me be a leader, again, were blessings. I think the point is, for every cloudy day, once you get through it, there's actually silver linings. And I think that's a bit of the age and wisdom that starts to come out in me, that everybody goes through tough times, whether it's at work or, whatever. I think you need to digest them, understand them, take them as data points, figure out what you're going to do about it. But I'd say 95% of the time, you come out the other way and reflect back and go, boy, am I lucky that, I went through that experience, no matter how painful it is. And, I
Another one
there's,
of those great learning experiences. There's another kind of phrase in there that I
yeah,
use sometimes. But let me ask you this too. The last time we talked, you mentioned that Deloitte now has looking at employees based on their natural abilities, and not just kind of putting people into pegs because that's the way it should be. So again, what have you learned in terms of the skills that you do have and the jobs that were passed over? What were some of the things that were really not in your wheelhouse that now you're grateful for, but maybe in your earlier years you didn't really understand so much?
yeah. So Deloitte does this thing called business chemistry, and it's like a Myers-Briggs or other things, other sort of personality tests. But this is sort of this simple, 4-dimension evaluation that we give our people, but also give our clients. And there are 4 major characteristics. You can be a guardian, which is all about detail and numbers oriented and all the very specific, almost, ADD type of behavior. You have the integrators who care and worry about the people and the socialization. you have the drivers, just do it, you know, and don't necessarily care about the details. And then you also have the explorers, who are really sort of the idea visionaries, and you know, sort of big picture thinkers. So after I've done these tests, you know, I've come back to realize, you know, I'm an explorer and an integrator. I love people. People are a really important part of my life. And I'm very much creative and big thinking. But the last thing I enjoy is being a guardian. Hate it, hate it, hate it. I've had to learn how to deal with it. I've had to learn how to find people and skills that complement me, so I fill those gaps. I also have adopted to be a driver because I have to be. I have to be in my job. And I let others deal with some of the details to get there. And I think about, you know, when we're trying to hire people, and it's funny, I did a lab around this for one of our clients, and they came back to us and said, you know, can you help us with this? We're having a really hard time with decision making. Well, it turns out they had, out of their group of 16, they had 14 drivers, 1 guardian, and 1 integrator. No visionaries, nobody cared about the detail, and nobody worried about keeping anybody up to date. So no wonder they couldn't succeed. And it was a huge eye opener to people and their skill sets, and really recognizing what your own individual skill sets are. And, you know, how do you recognize, like I tell my team, like, attention to detail is not Bob. And I'll write a lot of stuff, but I'm like, you have to read this, guys. Like, you have to read it, because I don't have the error correction in my head. And it's true, I don't. Like, I could read something 50 times. Very candidly, Tina, I'm even listening to what you read off before, going, oh man, is that really what that says? So, but my point is, I found people who complement me, and that's really been the biggest part of like my evolution
I
as a
want to
leader.
I want to applaud Deloitte really for being that forward thinking, because as an educator, we've known this for ages and ages and ages, and kids that don't do well in school frequently don't do well for these reasons. And if we teach to their aptitudes, and what, you know, and kind of work out who they really are, I think young people are going to work out a lot better. And John, you're on here, you're a student, and I would presume perhaps at this time that you have some idea of what these aptitudes are that really work for you and the ones that don't. Not everybody that's on this call um, went through that and had the advantage of that. So on a very different topic, Bob, I know again that you have a family, you have a wife, you have 2 daughters, one's getting ready to
Mhm.
get
Yep.
married. And how in your career have you managed, because I know how busy you are, and I know a lot of the issues that happen for people who continue to move up, move up, move up, that these things get very, very
Yeah.
squeezed. How have you managed to work this out with your family?
You know, Tina, it has been, especially my career at Deloitte, but even prior to Deloitte, um, it's life's work. You know, I will say, and I could admit, and at times a little bit sad, or, you know, feel terrible that, you know, many times, especially earlier in my career, I put my career first. I'm doing this for I'm doing this for us, right? I'm not sure who I was kidding on that. But it was a commitment that I made to come into Deloitte as a partner. I couldn't fail. Like, I couldn't fail. But that took its toll. It took its toll when I traveled. It took its toll when I worked nights and weekends. It took its toll, you know, in many dimensions. You know, I thought in the early years with my kids, I could both be their, you know, their soccer coach and their field hockey coach, you know, and try to do work, you know, to a degree. I think I was trying to do it more for me than do it for them upon reflection. Um, I'm happy I did it. I think they're happy I did it, but, you know, I wonder what life would have been like without that. But, you know, I think the reflection is, and even today, right? My daughters are 26 and 29, which just blows me away. Um, I've gotten so grounded on remembering why I'm doing this. I am I am lucky that I'm further along in my career, and I don't need to um, I don't need to drive the way I used to, but I'm very, very conscious about my travel, the effects on my family, and I do make time. It's wonderful. Deloitte a couple years ago put in a no email on weekends policy. So you're allowed to do your email, but you can tell people they don't need to respond if they don't want to. So for those who want to catch up, that's been very healthy to the point where, and from having, 100,000 emails in my mailbox to, you're lucky you see 10 a weekend that are really work oriented. That's a pretty huge reduction. And it means the whole firm has slowed down. The firm has done other things around giving people time to catch up on work, sort of no weekends, Fridays. Excuse me, no meeting Fridays. So there's things, but as an individual partner, I'm responsible for doing it myself, and I need to create these boundaries. I will say I've not been very good over COVID because I think I've had about 5 days off in 2 years, but that's a whole different issue of just being so busy at work. Uh, but if you don't, I had a boss that used to say this, right? If you don't remember that science experiment, where you have the cylinder and you put the rocks and the sand and the water in. If you don't put the rocks in first,
The big
right?
rocks.
The big rocks, right? You fill it up with all the tiny stuff, you never get the big rocks in. So, big rocks are family events, vacations, right? Things that are really important to you, and then go down in sort of the level of granularity. But, those are big things. And it took me a long time to figure that out. Again, I indexed on a work level than necessarily on my family.
Awesome. So we have just a couple more minutes. We have 5 more minutes, and I would love to open it up to anybody that wants to ask Bob a question, anything that you're kind of sitting there figuring out how to do this, and who wants to kind of take the floor? Anybody got something for this guy? You've answered everything, Bob.
Yes, that is.
We all got it figured out.
Yeah. I think, Tina, the things that you've given me the gift of, right, are actually opening my eyes to the important things. And, first of all, I think the most important thing that I've learned over the last 20 years um, is truly appreciate the love and um, recognition that you've earned, and don't drain your soul um, with sort of the noise or the BS or your expectations. For me, you know what? I've done a good job. I'm really happy with where I am in life. But that is not always had not always been where I was. The step back and smell the roses. Everybody works really hard. Go take advantage of the fruits of your efforts and be proud of yourselves. And I think that changes your whole attitude. And and if your expectations are too high, lower them. In that, there's only so much you can do in life.
I always say that if your expectations are over here and your
Right.
reality is over here, you got frustration and disappointment in between. Right?
Yeah.
So how quickly can we get over here? Because this is where we need to operate from. So I'm kind of like one of those very proud parents to hear Bob and hear and just kind of watch him develop and be just an amazing human being, a father, a leader, and really work on transforming, coming from, we all come from childhood. Our parents were not perfect parents. None of them had this. I don't know about yours, but I had smart parents and a lot of common sense, but they didn't know half the stuff that we're talking about today. And so this I always say that good mental health is not a natural sport, it's a learned sport. If you heard how many times did Bob talk about what he learned, what he noticed, what he observed, and made himself available for the kind of help that could give him a bigger picture. So a lot of times when we come into, we see the world, you know, if we look at our little boxes, this is how we see the world, in these little boxes. And when you have people that are mentors and people that care about you, they give you the big view, you know. And as Bob said, just turn around it and make it like a mirror. Oh yeah, I didn't see that before. Or just look over there. Yeah. So I'm going to make a plug for personal growth, transformation, all the things that make us great leaders and mentors. And as adults, I got to tell you, it's our responsibility because we've got a whole generation behind us that need our help. So thank you again, Bob, for being so gracious and being so real and authentic as you are, and for
Thank you.
everybody to come on to join us. And we have a replay of this. If those people that you haven't, you know, that didn't catch on can see it, and you can see it again and take some of Bob's wisdom. So thank you again.
You're welcome.
Love you
An
all.
honor to be here.